the mysterious connection. Claire's life was a predictable cadence of monotony. The alarm clock would buzz at noon, its grating sound pulling her from restless sleep. She'd shuffle into her tiny kitchen, the linoleum floor cold beneath her bare feet, and make a cup of coffee that she'd sip while staring out the window at the bustling street below. The mornings were hers, though they felt empty. She had no one to share them with. Her work at the tavern started in the late afternoon. The establishment was cozy but unremarkable, tucked between a laundromat and a pawnshop. The regulars came and went like clockwork, construction workers seeking solace in cheap beer, college students chasing fleeting weekend thrills, and the occasional loner nursing a drink in the corner. For Claire, it was a job, not a passion. The worst part was the unwanted attention. Men would lean over the bar, their words slurred and their intentions obvious. "Hey, sweetheart, why don't you pour yourself into my lap instead of that glass?" One particularly brash patron sneered one night. Claire forced a tight smile, her grip on the glass tightening. "That'll be $7.50, she said coolly, sliding his drink across the counter. She endured these encounters daily, her practiced neutrality her only shield. But it wore on her. The relentless flirtation, the empty conversations, the noise. It all reinforced her isolation. At the end of each shift, she'd walk home under the glow of streetlights, longing for something. Someone to fill the void. One particularly lonely evening, Claire found herself scrolling through her phone after her shower. The faint hum of her fridge was the only sound in her apartment. An ad popped up for a new social platform aimed at connecting people through shared interests. "Join today and find your soulmate," it promised. Claire hesitated. She'd never been one for online interactions, but the lack of decent connections pushed her. With a sigh, she clicked the link and created a profile. The platform asked her to select her interests: literature, art, history. She typed out a brief bio. Lover of Gothic novels, aspiring writer, bartender by night. Claire skimmed through the platform half-heartedly, her fatigue from the day pressing down on her. She set her phone on the bedside table and climbed into bed. Sleep came quickly, though her dreams were restless. Visions of endless conversations and faceless voices. The next morning, Claire woke to the faint sunlight streaming through her curtains. During her usual routine of coffee and staring out the window, she picked up her phone and unlocked it to find her notifications overflowing. Her inbox was flooded with messages, more than she'd expected. Her heart skipped a beat as she scrolled through them, her curiosity piqued. Most were generic introductions or shallow compliments, but as she skimmed through, one caught her attention and made her pause. "Lucien, I see we share a fondness for the Brontes. Do you prefer the brooding melancholy of Heathcliff or the quiet resilience of Jane Eyre?" Claire: "That's a tough choice. I admire Jane's strength and independence, but there's something hauntingly beautiful about Heathcliff's passion. What about you?" Lucien: "Jane inspires me, but Heathcliff's torment feels closer to my soul. There is a certain poetry in his longing, don't you think?" Claire: "There is, though sometimes his actions make me want to throw the book across the room. But I guess that's part of what makes him such a compelling character." Lucien: "Indeed. The greatest characters are the ones that stir our emotions, whether in love or frustration. Are there any other literary figures who have captured your heart?" Claire: "Oh, countless. Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice comes to mind. Her wit and strength are so refreshing. And you?" Lucien: Elizabeth is a brilliant choice. For me, there's Cyrano de Bergerac. His eloquence and unyielding heart despite his insecurities resonate deeply with me." Claire: "That's such a beautiful choice. His love for Roxane is heartbreaking and inspiring at the same time. You've really thought about this, haven't you?" Lucien: "I've had plenty of time to ponder such things. Tell me, Claire, if you could step into any story, which one would it be?" Claire: Oh, that's easy, Jane Eyre. I'd love to wander Thornfield Hall and unravel its mysteries. What about you? Lucien. Perhaps I already live in one. What began as a single exchange quickly evolved into a nightly ritual. Lucien's messages were unlike any she'd ever received, eloquent, thoughtful, and laced with a poetic charm that felt almost otherworldly. He spoke of his love for old libraries, moonlit gardens, and art that captured the fragility of life. Their conversations stretched long into the night, her laughter and sighs filling the small apartment. Over time, Lucien became her confidant. She shared her frustrations about work, her dreams of writing a novel, and her deepest insecurities. He listened, really listened, and offered insights that felt wise beyond his years. Despite their growing closeness, Lucien remained an enigma. He revealed little about his own life, deflecting questions with playful evasions or poetic riddles. Claire didn't mind. His words were enough to make her feel seen and valued. Months turned into years. Lucien's presence became a constant in Claire's life, a light in the darkness of her routine. Often, she found herself daydreaming about meeting him in person, wondering what he looked like, how his voice would sound beyond the written word. She had imagined it countless times, him walking into the bar one quiet evening, or them meeting by chance in a library as their hands reached for the same book. Yet, despite the depth of their connection, neither of them had ever taken the step to suggest meeting face to face. Perhaps it was fear of shattering the perfection of their bond, or perhaps the timing had never felt right. Then, one evening, his tone shifted. "Dearest Claire, you've been a light in my otherwise solitary existence. I've longed for the day when our words would be more than digital whispers. If you'd grant me the honor, I'd love for you to visit my home. It's a modest place, but it would bring me immeasurable joy to finally meet you." Lucien included an address in the secluded countryside, far from the city's clamor. Claire's heart raced as she read his message. The idea of meeting him was thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. She set her phone down and paced her apartment, thoughts racing. Could she truly go through with this? Questions filled her mind. What if he wasn't who he claimed to be? What if meeting him changed everything? For hours she wrestled with doubt and excitement, her mind jumping between the possibilities. But as the evening wore on, a quiet certainty settled in her chest. This was Lucien, the man whose words had brought her solace, whose companionship had made her feel less alone. She knew deep down that she couldn't resist the chance to meet him. Her reply was simple, but heartfelt. "Lucien, I would be honored to visit. Your invitation means more to me than I can say. I look forward to finally meeting you." The journey to Lucien's address was surreal. Claire arrived at the train station early, her nerves fluttering with a mix of excitement and trepidation. As she approached the ticket counter, she was informed of an unexpected upgrade to first class, courtesy of Lucien. It felt like the first glimpse into the kind of world he inhabited, one of elegance and subtle luxury. Settling into the plush leather seat, Claire marveled at the difference. A glass of champagne was offered almost immediately, and the view of the countryside unfurled outside the large windows like a painting coming to life. The sunlight painted the rolling hills gold, and the train seemed to glide as if enchanted. As she sipped her champagne, Claire couldn't help but feel that the journey was taking on a magical quality, as if fate had conspired to make this day extraordinary. When the train finally reached its destination, the golden glow of the evening sun bathed the platform. From there, a driver in a sleek black car waited to escort her to Lucien's home. The winding road was flanked by towering trees, their skeletal branches reaching like claws against the twilight sky. Each bend in the path seemed to deepen the sense of anticipation, the woods giving way to an open clearing where the mansion stood like something out of a dream. Claire froze and gasped in awe. Before her stood a mansion that seemed to belong to another century. Its Gothic spires pierced the heavens, silhouetted against an indigo sky. Ivy clung to the weathered stone facade, twisting like ancient fingers. Gargoyles perched at the roof's corners, their grotesque faces illuminated by flickering iron lanterns lining the cobblestone path to the grand doors. The mansion exuded eerie elegance. Towering arched windows framed by intricate iron latticework glowed faintly, hinting at ornate chandeliers and crimson velvet curtains within. The doors were heavy oak, etched with swirling patterns and reinforced with iron bands. Above the entryway, a worn stone crest bore a symbol Claire couldn't decipher, its presence ancient and foreboding. The grounds were cloaked in mist, swirling around twisted leafless trees. Marble statues of robed figures lined the path, their faces etched with sorrow. The air carried the faint scent of damp earth and roses, as though the mansion itself breathed a mix of decay and beauty. It was the kind of place she had only read about in Lucien's beloved Gothic novels, but seeing it in person felt both surreal and fitting. Claire hesitated, clutching her overnight bag tightly, before she rapped the heavy iron knocker. The door creaked open to reveal a handsome man she barely recognized. "Lucien?" she whispered. He was tall, with a chiseled jawline, sharp cheekbones, and hair as dark as midnight. His amber eyes gleamed, and his smile held a warmth that set her at ease. "Claire?" he said, his voice a low, velvety caress. "You're even more radiant than I imagined." His eyes flickered to the overnight bag in her hand, and he stepped back slightly. With a subtle nod, he gestured, and a butler appeared as if summoned from the shadows. The man, impeccably dressed in a black suit with a silver chain glinting across his chest, stepped forward and gave a slight bow. "Miss Claire?" the butler said, his voice smooth and measured. "Allow me to take your bag and guide you to your room." Claire blinked, momentarily taken aback by the formality, but handed over her bag. The butler took it with practiced ease and turned to ascend the grand staircase, his footsteps barely making a sound on the polished wood. Lucien smiled, his amber eyes warm. "I'll be waiting in the drawing room. Take your time to settle in, and once you're ready, we can enjoy some tea before dinner." Claire nodded, still taking in the splendor around her. "That sounds perfect." "Thank you, Lucien." He inclined his head slightly, his smile deepening. "The pleasure is mine, Claire." "Truly." Claire nodded, still taking in the splendor around her. "That sounds perfect." "Thank you, Lucien." He offered her a small, knowing smile. "It is I who should thank you, Claire, for coming all this way." The butler opened a heavy oak door at the end of the hall, stepping aside to let Claire enter. Her breath caught as she took in the room. It was a masterful blend of Gothic grandeur and understated elegance. A grand four-poster bed dominated the space, its dark wooden frame intricately carved with swirling patterns that seemed alive in the flickering light of the fire burning in the massive stone fireplace. The crimson canopy and matching velvet drapes exuded warmth and mystery. The walls were paneled in dark wood, adorned with gilded mirrors and hauntingly beautiful oil paintings that seemed to watch her every move. A crystal chandelier hung from the vaulted ceiling, its dimmed light casting soft, ethereal glows across the room. The furniture, a fainting couch upholstered in deep burgundy, a mahogany writing desk, and an armoire with iron accents, was both luxurious and functional. The fireplace crackled warmly, its mantel adorned with silver candelabras and an ornate clock that ticked softly. Near the window, heavy velvet curtains were tied back with golden cords, revealing a view of the moonlit gardens below. The scent of aged wood and faintly of roses lingered in the air, adding to the room's spellbinding charm. Claire turned to the butler, her awe evident. "This is stunning." "Mr. Lucien ensured every detail was prepared for your comfort," the butler replied with a slight bow. "If there is anything you require, please do not hesitate to call upon me." With that, he placed her bag neatly by the armoire and departed, leaving Claire to take it all in. She ran her fingers along the soft fabric of the bed's canopy, feeling as though she'd stepped into the pages of one of her favorite novels. The room was perfect, a sanctuary of beauty and intrigue that seemed to echo Lucien's essence. The evening was a whirlwind of revelations. Lucien's home was a treasure trove of art and history. Paintings of landscapes and portraits adorned every wall, lit by candelabras that cast a golden glow. He led her to a vast library filled with leather-bound tomes, their spines gilded and well-worn. "This is incredible," Claire marveled. "It's like stepping into another world." Lucien's smile was enigmatic. "This place has been my sanctuary for centuries." She laughed, assuming it was a jest, but his expression remained serious. Her laughter faltered. "Lucien, what do you mean?" He hesitated, his gaze searching hers. "I've kept something from you, Claire. Something I feared might drive you away. But seeing you here, I realize I can't keep it from you any longer." The room seemed to grow colder. Lucien stepped closer, his amber eyes locked on hers. "I am not like you. I am older, much older, and I am bound to the night." Claire blinked, confusion clouding her features. "I don't understand. What are you saying?" Lucien's expression softened with a hint of sadness. He stepped closer, his amber eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Slowly, he parted his lips, revealing elongated, razor-sharp fangs that glinted like ivory daggers. Claire took an involuntary step back, her breath hitching. "Are those fangs?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes," he replied quietly, his tone tinged with regret. "I am a vampire, bound to the night, sustained by blood, and cursed to walk this earth for eternity." The weight of his confession hung in the air, heavy and surreal. Claire's mind raced, trying to process the impossible revelation. It explained so much: his old-fashioned mannerisms, his aversion to meeting during the day, the timeless quality of his speech. Lucien's voice broke the silence, low and filled with sorrow. "You must think I'm a monster," Lucien said softly, turning away. But Claire didn't run. She didn't scream. Instead, she reached out, her fingers brushing his arm. "Lucien, you've been my friend, my confidant, my anchor. Whatever you are, that doesn't change what you mean to me." His gaze snapped to hers, hope flickering in his eyes. "You truly mean that?" "I do." The tension between them melted, replaced by something tender and electric. Lucien stepped closer, his hand cupping her cheek. "You are remarkable, Claire, and I am so glad you're here." She leaned into his touch, her heart pounding. Slowly, he bent his head, their lips meeting in a kiss that was both gentle and fervent. The world seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them bathed in the soft glow of the library's candlelight. When they finally parted, Claire smiled. "So, do all vampires live in Gothic mansions? Or is it just you?" Lucien chuckled, his laugh rich and melodic. "It's a preference, though I must admit, it's far less lonely with you here." And for the first time in years, both Lucien and Claire felt truly alive.